Hello, my pack, my tribe. Welcome to Howling After Dark. Tonight, we are doing Paranormal True Crime, which I've done before. I've talked about the victims that haunt and the killers that haunt, but tonight we're talking about the detectives who haunt. But before we go into all that, those of you that have been listening to my show for a while now know how wild and funny and at times poignant my rants can be. Well, you're in for a treat tonight because I have, something juicy to rant about. But before I go into that, I've got to give a little background on what's up. You see, my team, Ghostful Paranormal, who this show is pretty much all about, prior to my forming of Ghostful Paranormal, I was a member of a different paranormal team, a team called PACE, Paranormal Encrypted Exploration. And we went our separate ways over some, well, let's call it what it is, bullshit. And up until now, I've been relatively nice about it all. I haven't really named names or gone into detail about what happened. Well, and by the way, when I rant, I cuss, so if you have small children about, you might want to send them to bed or in another room or what have you. Tonight, that niceness is fucking over. Let me explain to you why. The reason I left that team in the first place, okay, and I think all of you are going to see what I see, I'm pretty sure. I found out that one of the founders, a guy by the name of Joe James, was stealing, basically, not only from our clients who would come in and pay for ghost hunts, but also from his own team. And when I brought that to the other founder's attention, a gentleman by the name of Greg Sider, who, by the way, I don't have a problem with, I was basically shunned and forced to make the decision to leave the team. Now, this is what really, truly pisses me off about this fucker Joe James. He has stolen thousands of dollars by overcharging clients on ghost hunts. He has stolen thousands of dollars by not divvying up the proceeds of these ghost hunts to the rest of his team, including myself. In more than a year of investigating with them, I got paid once, and it wasn't even a full share. Which, you know, I don't particularly fucking care about that. The point is, this guy is a liar, he's a fucking thief, and he's a fucking con man. And as bad as all that fucking bullshit is, the part that truly drives me fucking insane and makes me want to squeeze his fucking neck until his head pops is the fact that nobody calls him on his bullshit. He's a so-called author, but the thing is like every single book he's written, all it is like copy and pasted fucking interviews and shit. It's not even an original fucking content. So on top of all that, he's a fucking plagiarist too. And what is bringing all this up tonight, you ask? Very fucking simple. There's a TV show called Ghost Asylum. If you have not seen it, watch the latest episode. They went to the Mansfield Reformatory right here in Mansfield, Ohio. One of the biggest, most haunted fucking places in the world. And who did they fucking interview? Fucking Joe James. This guy is still fucking operating because nobody calls him on his bullshit. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm calling him on his bullshit. And just on the off chance that this motherfucker is listening to me tonight, Joe, fucking pay attention. Your fun and games are fucking over. I'm fucking coming for your goddamn ass, and you better pray to God I don't find you. And you can go ahead and run, but you're just gonna fucking die tired. I've always been a big proponent of accountability in the paranormal field. Always. Since fucking day one. And this guy just fucking gets under my goddamn skin. And I gotta tell you, I'm not the guy. Okay? I'm not the guy to fucking have on your looking for you. I'm not the guy to have hunting your fucking ass down. I gave him a fucking chance to fucking straighten his shit out. Because of him, Pace is no longer in existence, by the way. They have lost everything in Mansfield. They used to control, like, pretty much everything but the reformatory as far as haunted locations in Mansfield. They don't have any of it anymore because of Joe James. I mean, the fact that he rips clients off in the way he treats fucking people, anyways. So, yeah, I'm not a big fucking fan of this guy, like, at all. I would rather... Let me put it to you this way. If my only chance to get to him were to belly crawl through broken glass, I would have a bloody stomach. Anywho, now that that's out of the way, on with tonight's show. Now, those of you that have been listening to my show for a while, you've heard me do paranormal true crime shows before. I've covered the Black Dahlia. I've covered the whole Edward Wayne Edwards thing, who is, by the way, Edward Wayne Edwards was an American serial killer that we actually think now, we can't prove it, but because he's dead, but we think now that he may have not only been the guy who killed the Black Dahlia, we think he may have been responsible for a lot of the major murder cases throughout the years, over a 66-year span of time. The Black Dahlia, the Zodiac killings, the West Memphis Three, Jean-Benet Ramsey, and the list goes on and on and on and on. It's actually hard to keep track of all the ones we think are, his doing. But he was smart. He always made sure like the evidence pointed towards somebody else. So, but he died, fortunately, I guess. Well, I guess kind of unfortunately, because we're never gonna really know for sure. I mean, not in the mundane world, anyways. So, yeah, I've covered all that stuff, and I've covered, hauntings, like places like the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles that is not only haunted by serial killers, namely Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, as well as another serial killer that came from Sweden, whose name I always forget. But it's also haunted by a couple murder victims, too, including the Black Dahlia, because that's where she lived, where she was living when she died, was at the Cecil Hotel in L.A. And you can find, you can do a Google search on the Cecil Hotel, that's C-E-C-I-L, Hotel, in L.A., and it'll tell you all about it. But, yeah, so I've covered the victims, I've covered the killers like Herb Baumeister from the famous Fox Hollow Farm. But tonight we are going to be talking about the detectives. Now this is really cool, and this is something I found out through like my research for tonight's show. I found out stuff I didn't know, and I'm a big history nut. I found out some stuff I never knew, like about this guy in England that was labeled the real Sherlock Holmes, which is like kind of written about in kind of like a biographic way in a book called Brilliant Deduction by an author named Matt Kunz. That's Kuhns. In which he writes about several real-life detectives, and one of which is Ignatius Polacky. They called him Paddington because it's the area of London that he worked in mostly, was Paddington. He was called a true man of mysteries in every sense. Polacky, who operated for... He was born in 1828 and he died in 1918. Was a Hungarian detective in London's Paddington Green area. He tracked international fugitives, spent decades working on mysteries, and thwarted criminal deeds. He was so famous in Europe by 1880, he was a household name and was immortalized in poems and songs. He was a private detective who kept very much to himself. In an article published by Von Dryden in Very Odd Fellows, Dryden says Pulaski was sinister enough to know what criminals were thinking because he had acquired knowledge of how they operate. Dryden said Pulaski was secretive about how he knew these things, though, and stayed quiet about most subjects pertaining to himself. Just as his name and reputation were gaining him celebrity, Pulaski retired and left the limelight. A few years later, the fictional detective Sherlock Holmes hit the scene and all but obliterated thoughts of Pulaski. And some think that those two things are actually connected. But supposedly, and I say supposedly because I haven't actually been there to investigate the place myself, his flat in Paddington Green in London, which is on the south end, I believe, is said to be extremely haunted, and one of the ghosts that are said to be there are that of Ignatius Pulacky. People have reported shadow figures, disembodied voices, noises. One person saw a full-bodied apparition that fits his description, and he's got that kind of. I mean, this is. Let me see if I can't pull this up. This is kind of a cartoonized representation of him, but this is basically what they described. So, if you're in our chat room, you can see that picture. I mean, like I said, it's cartoonized, but that's basically what it looked like. So, I mean, imagine, it's like 2012 when this lady saw him in what is now her home, and she's just coming down the hallway from her bathroom, and she sees this guy dressed like that in her hallway. So I'm sure you can imagine she probably freaked out quite a bit. Strange man in her home while she's, practically naked. Okay, the next guy, and this guy we're going to talk about a little bit more in part 2 tonight because he was fucking amazing. This next guy was called the American Sherlock Holmes. Ellis Parker was born in 1871. He died in 1940. Was known among many other names as the Sherlock Holmes of America. Parker, a rural fiddler in a small town in New Jersey, he became the detective known for solving so many cases. He was even consulted on the kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's infant son. Okay, now, for those that don't know, I've actually covered the Charles Lindbergh thing. Charles Lindbergh was a famous aviator and businessman who flew his plane, which was called the Spirit of St. Louis. He was the first man to do a transatlantic flight. His infant son, Charles Lindbergh Jr., was kidnapped and murdered in the 1920s. And Parker actually worked on this case. Parker became so good at being a detective, he had stories written about the crimes he solved, and the small-town boy became a well-traveled and well-respected man. According to Kunz, Jersey Man magazine published an article about Parker chronicling his career, focusing on the barn-burning cases Parker solved in the early 1900s in New Jersey. By the time the case was solved, 14 barns had burned, and the criminal was found not to be a pyromaniac, but rather a house thief burning away evidence. It was cases like this that got Parker the lead on the Lindbergh case, where Parker was later accused of kidnapping and torturing an innocent man. No good deed goes unpunished. Kunz said this case was Parker's attempt to end his astounding career on a high note, but the pressure of the case drove Parker crazy, and he resorted to illegal actions, ruining his reputation. He died in prison in 1940. Well, here's the funny thing, and this is the part they didn't mention in this article. The prison he died in was Eastern State Penitentiary right outside of Philadelphia that like practically every paranormal show on TV has been to at this point. And even though he was a famous detective, he was later convicted of, kidnapping and torturing somebody. His fame there has been kind of diminished by the fact that Al Capone was also locked up there and was recorded as being haunted himself. by one of his victims. Okay. Um, this guy I find to be very interesting. This next guy, because of the political climate of the time. The first captain of detectives in San Francisco, Isaiah Lees, who was born in 1830, he died in 1902, was the first captain of detectives in the San Francisco Police Department. Author Bill Seacrest wrote a biography about Lees in which he describes the way Lees became captain so quickly. In 1849, Lees arrived at the San Francisco Police Department, but the department had no detectives unit. By early 1851, the local papers were blasting the police department's efforts and saying the police were not properly doing their jobs. Lees left the department, but in 1852, fate would bring him back when a stabbing occurred adjacent to where Lees worked for the Union Iron Works. Lees worked the case with friends even though he was no longer with the department. He joined the force in 1853, and in 1854 the Detectives Task Force was established. Lee's abilities were quickly recognized, and he was put in charge of the detective unit as an assistant captain. He was then appointed captain in 1856, but then was put back to patrolman due to the uncertainty of the department. In 1859, he was reappointed captain and was then made chief of police in 1897. During his career, Lees led a drama-filled life filled with counterfeiting, frauds, thefts, kidnappings, and violent, vicious murders. He was a legend in San Francisco and around the country. Among other things, which it doesn't actually mention in this article, he actually worked the H.H. Holmes case. And for those of you that don't know, H.H. Holmes was a serial killer who owned a hotel. And he had the hotel built so that it would have, like, secret passages and trapdoors. It was basically made into a giant death trap. And Lees was actually brought to Chicago to work the H.H. Holmes case. And in fact, on the site where that hotel used to be, one of the ghostly figures that are often seen there, standing on the street corner looking up at the building, is none other than Isaiah Lees. And it is also said that he haunts his former home in San Francisco. All right, this next one, I'm kind of rather proud of, because he's from right here in Ohio. He was called the tailor-made detective. William J. Burns was born August 22nd, 1921. He died June 14th. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He became a detective August 22nd, 1921, and his career ended on June 14th, 1924. So he was only a detective for 3 years. He was a tailor from Columbus, Ohio, who became a detective and loved the attention he received from his exploits against counterfeiters, corruption, thieves, and terrorist bombers. Burns was a maverick and a frontier lawman who often found himself at odds with the changing and maturing world of law enforcement. He was always involved in controversy and scandal and ended his long career with a tarnished name and a reputation for being a dirty detective. Burns was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and performed as a Secret Service agent when he was young. According to the FBI's website, he took his reputation and made the William J. Burns International Detective Agency. Burns became a national figure due to his police work, and he even made national news. The gossip column newspapers and the pages of detective magazines. He was also friends with Warren G. Harding's attorney, General Harry M. Daugherty, and through this friendship, Burns was appointed director of the Bureau of Investigation on August 22, 1921. Under Burns, the FBI shrank its ranks by half, and in just 3 years, and he was then asked to resign by then Attorney General Harlan Fiske. Because of his role in a scandal involving the secret leasing of naval oil reserve lands to private companies. After his retirement in 1924, Burns wrote stories about his real-life cases, becoming one of the first writers to sensationalize police work in such a way. And here's the thing. There's actually an office building. Okay, and this is a place I've actually been to, so I know about this. There's an office building. It's in Columbus, Ohio. Sorry, had to take a drink. Mouth was getting dry. There's actually a office building in Columbus, Ohio that he is said to haunt. It was where his former office is when he formed his detective bureau. It's where they used to be prior to his enrollment into the Bureau of Investigation, which later became the FBI. And here's the thing. The thing about all the accounts of him there are a little weird. Because there's not a lot of visual stuff. People mainly hear noises. They have heard disembodied voices. People have gotten EVPs there. But main thing that happens there, and it's always at the same time. It's always at 12:01 every single night. Like the janitorial staff in the building report smelling the smell of cigar smoke. And he was an avid cigar smoker for years. But here, let me post this in the chat room. That's what he looks like. That's Burns. Now this next guy, oh my God. It's guys like this next guy I'm going to talk about that I wish I had a time machine for. You know, just to go back and meet people like this, because I would love to pick his brain. One of the first Scotland Yard detectives was a fellow by the name of Jonathan Witcher. And that was from 1814 to 1881 on him. One of Scotland Yard's first 8 detectives, he was soon to be known as London's original amazing detective and was a household name. He's had many books, plays, and even modern television shows based off of his life and cases. Even Charles Dickens wrote about him. His reputation was basically ruined, however, when he was assigned to a case that gained national attention. The case involved a murdered infant in which he suspected the child's older sister of the murder. He accused her but had no clear evidence, as the one key piece of evidence was hidden by a police superintendent to save face after the evidence was stolen from him. The media did not approve of Witcher accusing the 16-year-old girl and wrote awful, damaging things about him in the papers. Later it was discovered the girl had in fact been the murderer when she confessed. The girl was sentenced to death, but her confession came too late, according to the site Metropolitan Police, Witcher's career was all but over. The book, The Suspicions of Witcher, however, says that Witcher was exonerated after the girl confessed and went back to work as a private investigator, even playing the lead in a very big case which retired from all police work in 1881. The girl was never executed, but did serve 20 years in prison for her crime. Now, here's the interesting thing about this dude. And once again, I don't know why, but it doesn't mention it in this particular article, but Jonathan Witcher was one of the investigators of the Jack the Ripper cases. Which, was just 7 years after, it states here, in 1888. But here's the thing with him. Like, with the hauntings and stuff going on with him, like I would, like, if I went there to investigate, I would have to come at him, like, adversarially. Because everything he's doing right now is aggressive. Like, he is angry. And I kind of don't blame him, but still, he, in particular, does not like women at all. And I think that has a lot to do with the girl who committed that particular murder, and the fact that he blames her for ruining his career and basically his life. But women in particular get scratched, get pushed. One woman actually even got pushed down a flight of stairs. And it's all in one house. And this house is right near where this crime scene was. Which is actually a house in Notting Hill, which is an area of London. You actually, like, if you've ever seen the movie Notting Hill, it actually shows the house I'm talking about. It's like 3 doors down from the house with the blue door. Oh, just interesting side note. Okay, this next one, this is kind of 3 guys all rolled into one. This is about the Pinkertons. Pinkertons now are a security company, but they were originally a detective agency. Actually, let me check a couple things here. Okay, I got about 10 minutes left on this part, and then I'll have to come back for part 2. By the way, since I didn't get to it earlier, I want to give shout-outs to everybody in chat. Anonymous420, which I'm assuming is Twizzy. Toxie. And I'm not sure who else is there because they haven't been talking. But, whoever you are, my ghosts, if you will, definitely welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and all that good stuff. So, anyways, here we go. The Pinkerton Creates a Legacy is the name of this article. Alan Pinkerton, who was born in 1819, he died 1884. William Pinkerton, his son, was born in 1846, died in 1923, and Robert Pinkerton was born in 1848 and died in 1907. Created a legacy of detective work that still lives on. He formed a detective agency that would be world known for producing some of the best detectives in the world, but their names may not always be remembered. The Pinkertons served as an effective national police force in the second half of the 18th century and fought spies and assassins in the Civil War. They are also well known for their work with capturing the infamous Jesse James. They helped create the Secret Service as well. The Pinkerton legend of detective work spans centuries. That may be why it is so funny that the original Pinkerton, a poorly educated village craftsman, became a detective through accident. He was involved with finding the culprit behind a series of local burglaries. I'm all tongue-tied tonight. And that led to him being a detective full-time. Pinkerton, a very conservative man, supported abolition, abolishing slaves, women's rights, and radical religious views. Maybe this is why they employed the first female detective, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, by the way. William and Robert were the sons of Alan and were even better detectives than their father. They have a history of tracing criminals from remote corners of the United States to Latin America, South America, and Europe. They fought master thieves, murderers, and gangs. The Pinkerton Code was created in 1850 to include not accepting bribes, never compromising, partnering with local law enforcement, refusing divorce cases and cases that incite scandal, turning down reward money, never raising fees without warning, and keeping clients up to date on the cases. According to the Pinkerton Detective Agency's own websites in 1856, Kate Warren was hired by the Pinkertons and became the world's first female detective in the United States in 1861. The Pinkertons uncovered and foiled an assassination plot on the life of Abraham Lincoln. During the Civil War, Pinkerton Agency served as head of the Union Intelligence Service, which later became the Secret Service. Now, here's the funny thing. You would think that guys that helped to create the Secret Service actually haunt the Secret Service building in Washington, D.C. But they don't. In fact, the place that they haunt is nowhere near Washington, D.C. The place they haunt is actually in Missouri. It's actually where they were stationed in Liberty, Missouri. The old like sheriff's office is like a sheriff / town marshal office and jail. That's where they had set up shop when they were hunting down Jesse James, and that is the place, for whatever reason, that they haunt. Even Alan's two sons haunt that place for whatever reason, and nobody knows. Nobody's been able to figure it out. It's just for whatever reason they're drawn there. I think it had something to do with the fact that the Jesse James case was kind of like the pinnacle in the career of Alan Pinkerton, personally. But, there's honestly no evidence to suggest that. Okay, so here we go. The first female detective, Kate Warren, was the first woman detective in the United States. According to reports by True TV, actually, and the Pinkertons' website, she was hired by the Pinkertons in 1856 and started a life of legend. Warren became supervisor of Pinkerton's Female Detective Bureau during a time when the female division was growing, despite efforts of a jealous wife of one of the Pinkertons' brothers to stop women from being in the business. Some even accused Alan Pinkerton, Warren's boss, of having an affair with Warren. These suspicions were never confirmed, although it was well known that William adored Kate. Warren worked on hundreds of cases with the Pinkerton Agency, using disguises better than most of her male counterparts and operatives. She's one of the best employees the Pinkertons had, and she set the bar for female detectives around the world. Warren became seriously ill when she was 35 years old, with nothing ever confirming why she died. Even after Alan worked hard to nurse her through her illness, he was lost without her and missed her to the point of it sending him into a deep depression. This is when he lost some of his abilities as a detective and his sons took over, proving to be great at detective work. Now, here's the funny thing. Kate Warren, she has been seen in several places, but probably the most humorous one is in the disguise that she's wearing in this picture. And yes, it is a disguise. This is one of the disguises she wore, dressed like a soldier. Here, I'm going to post this in the chat. So, I mean, you could see, obviously, in that picture, she looks very much like a soldier. You would never know that's a woman. And that's not a comment on the beauty or lack thereof of women in the 1800s, which, depending on who we're talking about, could go either way. But no, I mean, it was very obvious that she was very good at her job. And she actually haunts several places, but most prevalently, actually, is she haunts the Orient Saloon in Tombstone, Arizona. And I'm not entirely sure why. There's actually no record of her ever being in Tombstone, so it's kind of a mystery. Now, this next one, this is right up my alley. I'm a big Western nut, by the way. I'm really huge into, like, Wild West history. Very much into, like, all the old gunfighters and stuff. But another era of history I'm also fascinated with happens to be the 1920s and 1930s. Because it was like, almost like a resurgent of that gunfighter mentality in a lot of ways with a lot of these guys. And the next guy we're talking about here is from that era. In fact, he was known as the man who knew guns. Colonel Calvin Goddard got his famous start with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, when 7 men were lined up against a garage wall and murdered with machine guns. Goddard, already a famous firearms and ballistics expert, was called into Chicago from New York to examine the shells and other evidence at the scene of the slaughter. He was able to determine the men were killed by Al Capone and his mobsters dressed as police officers. Goddard's work attracted lots of attention, and a group of men made up of law enforcement and detectives called on Goddard for help. The group saw the need for scientific crime detection school and laboratory, and they put their money where their ideas lay and offered the financial backing for the school. Colonel Goddard accepted the position of director of the school and gathered groups of experts to teach in the school. Northwestern University, the country's first independent forensic science crime laboratory, opened in 1931. The school taught about blood analysis, fingerprinting, and firearms, in other words, ballistics. In 1932, Goddard advised the FBI at a similar forensic science crime laboratory. Colonel Goddard is credited with founding the science of firearms identification and the first example example of him using this method was during his investigation of the 1929 massacre. And in fact, there is an award for excellence in the field of forensic science that is called the Goddard Award. But this guy